The human brain is a funny thing. It starts working when we are born and works completely fine until you are on the racetrack on the day of the race, where it goes completely blank. Then your heart starts racing fast, your limbs are shaky, you can feel the adrenaline rushing through your body. You can't stop yourself from panicking back and forth. And suddenly your thought starts dancing around in your head. It's a spiral that just keeps you diving into more worries and scenarios that could possibly go wrong.
These are typical anxiety symptoms that you might have experienced before an important event, like a race with quite a strong competition. When we talk about anxiety before performance, we tend to mean that fearful state in relation to the event. This state comes with effects on our thoughts, behavior, and our body. But exactly how anxiety manifests is highly dependent on who you are. So maybe you're more prone to worrisome thoughts, while a friend of yours might struggle more with the behavioral effects like pacing. Like with stress, whenever we talk about anxiety, we tend to think about negative effects. But is that the whole truth? Could anxiety also be your friend?
What do you think? What is anxiety to you? Have you had any situations where you found anxiety to be actually helpful? Or has it always felt like anxiety was hampering your performance?
So I'm going to assume you took a few minutes to think about this. Do you remember that one important race where you looked around yourself and everything was numb? You could see a coach trying to instruct you, but you couldn't concentrate, and you kept thinking about the fact, how did I even get here? When we think of anxiety, we tend to relate it to negative aspects of our life. But have you ever thought of that one event where you could give your best because of the adrenaline, where your anxiety helped you perform more effectively? This is because optimal performance tends to happen at a certain energy level. Anxiety tends to increase our energy levels, which is why you'll find people pacing when they're getting anxious. This effect can be beneficial to your performance if the anxiety puts you into the right energy zone, which we also call optimal zone of functioning. Where that zone sits for you is highly subjective, meaning someone might even require anxiety to get them into their optimal zone of functioning. That requires quite a bit of energy. However, for someone else with an optimal zone of functioning at lower energy levels, or someone who's prone to a strong anxiety response, this effect of anxiety might actually push them outside of the optimal zone of functioning. And if you're outside of that zone, you can still perform, but are very unlikely to reach peak performance. Essentially, anxiety can both help and mess with reaching that optimal level.
Okay, so I understand what anxiety is, but what should I do to manage my anxiety to be in the optimal zone of functioning?
Well, maybe think about how you already deal with anxiety first. Do you have any coping strategies? I'm assuming you took a moment to think about this. Maybe you have some keywords written down, like breathing techniques or trying to focus your attention on something unrelated to the race. The idea behind managing anxiety is trying to direct the response of your body. In simple words, anxiety activates the fight or flight response in your body. If you can learn to optimally direct this, you will be able to reach your peak performance. There are a number of ways to manage anxiety. If you've listened to our podcast and webinar on stress management, you will have learned about relaxation techniques. These can also be helpful if you find yourself outside of your optimal zone of functioning before performance when anxiety is too high. A short relaxation period might help in this case to calm you down a little and get you to return to that right level.
If you have listened to our podcast and webinar on confidence, you will have learned about positive self-talk. Positive self-talk can not only increase your confidence, it also helps in reducing your anxiety. In fact, confidence and anxiety are fairly closely linked, meaning skills that build your confidence will also reduce your anxiety. Positive self-talk can help in key performance situations where you might be getting anxious to bring those anxiety levels down again.
However, in our workshop for pre-performance anxiety, we'll be focusing on teaching you imagery. Imagery is a bit more of a complex skill. This is because it requires you to both be able to create a vivid image, but also to control that image. When performing mental imagery, you will try to imagine yourself in the situation when you're performing a specific skill that you're anxious about. This means not only visualizing yourself performing the skill, but also taking into account all your other senses. If you're swimming, for example, you would want to imagine the smell. This could be chlorine if you're swimming indoors, or the smell of a lake if you're swimming outdoors. It includes what you can hear during the swim, so this could be your movements or the water around you. But also includes what you can taste. So again, this could be water, and what you can feel. So maybe the water rushing past you. Considering all senses will help you create a more vivid image of performing the skill that will make the imagery a lot more effective. Research has shown that imagery training can help in more precise and accurate actions in real life situations. So remember, when you're imagining things, you're actually training. This can lead you to be more confident about your performance and therefore reduce your anxiety. We'll go more into detail for how to practice imagery in the workshop.
In our workshop, we will also be talking about pre-performance routines. These are routines for specific behavioral or cognitive elements that you go through before a performance. For instance, it could be doing a very quick PMR session for a minute or two combined with some positive self-talk or imagining yourself doing well in the race. If you have taken part in other previous workshops, you might want to build your pre-performance routine in the webinar by combining one or two of your already learned skill with the imagery we are teaching in the session. But for now, you can go on to the links to know further more about imagery training. And thank you so much for listening to us, and hope to see you in the workshop.